Thank you. Thank you. Welcome. My name is Craig Rainey. They call me the Renaissance Man. Welcome to my podcast. Let's see if we get started.
Man, I'll tell you what, I like that intro. I feel like it's a little bit long, but a comment that I had today. Sorry, it was kind of funny. I was gonna have a podcast today. I was gonna go ahead and record one today anyway, but it has to do with writing. But I had a comment earlier this morning that came in, and I was looking frantically to find anything to add to my to my episode today, and this one is pretty interesting because this comment had to do with the the bumper music we played, and this guy said he really likes that first song, he likes the closing song, and asked where I get my music, and is it licensed, is it something that he can get a copy of it somewhere, and I don't necessarily blame this on my musical background, but all the music that I use in my different podcasts, throughout the web, I create myself, and I do it on my iPad. It's got something, I think it's called GarageBand, and so I put all this stuff together, and I was in the music business for a while, and I was a professional drummer is what I did, and I was fairly decent. I was pretty good, and if you ever want to see it, just get on YouTube and Google either Craig Rainey drums or Anthill Society, Jim Murray's Anthill Society, and I was a drummer with that band for about 10 years, and we did all originals. We put out a couple albums and played South by Southwest a couple times. We were really doing pretty well, and unfortunately, we lost our lead singer, songwriter, Jim Murray, a dear friend, and it was kind of sudden. This guy, I think he's one of the best songwriters, or was one of the best songwriters of our time, and he was taken from us way too soon. And he was like a brother to me, and I loved him, and I love him still. But anyway, I became their drummer, and anyway. To go back to it, I was in the music business for a pretty long time, and I played with a lot of cover bands. I played with some project bands, some original bands. We did a lot of studio stage work. When we were on the road, I picked up a little guitar, and it's funny. I'm not a guitarist, and I'm not even a good guitarist. In fact, I play just enough to really annoy people who know what they're doing. But I know some folk chords, and I can bar, and you give me enough distortion, I can actually make electric guitar sound like, one of these 70s things that I used to listen to. But anyway, I'm not really good at it, but I always had a love for guitar, and I've always owned a lot of guitars. And I had a Hammer electric that, it was just really set up nicely. But I had this, I think it was a Martin, and it was an acoustic. And interestingly, when I was in San Antonio, there's a place called House of Guitars, and the guy that owns that place, he used to be the lead guitar player for, what was the name of that band? I'll think of it here during the broadcast. But anyway, he set up this guitar. And it's funny because in New Braunfels, they used to have this radio show that I think they called it County Fair or Country Fair or something like that. And they recorded it in New Braunfels downtown in the Civic Center. And I think it was every Wednesday night they had it. And at that time, I was married to a country western singer, and she every now and then would go out there and sing, but I sang a little bit. With my voice, you'd say, yeah, right. But I used to have pretty decent falsetto, so I did some rock, and then I had a decent voice, so I could do some country. I was never great by any stretch of the imagination, and I never considered myself a true vocalist, but every now and then I do it. But when I would front a band, I did have a guitar, and I'd play some rhythm, but like I said, I wasn't that good, but I just had really, really good equipment and a great guitar. But anyway, this particular guitar. I almost had the name. Anyway, I'll come up with it. But it's funny because anybody that lives in San Antonio that's bought a guitar, they go, oh, yeah, Exile. There it is. The country band Exile. And that was it was either an 80s or a 90s band. They did a few songs that I can't call one to mind right now, the title, but I can hear it. But anyway, this guy was the lead singer with Exile, and they were big. I mean, they were touring, and he opened up this this guitar center. It's over the Great Northwest. I think it's off Culebra, but I could be wrong about that. But if you look it up, it's easy to find. But anyway, so this guitar, I took it over to this country fair gig that we were doing there, and I was going to sing a couple songs, and so they had me up. And at one time, I mean, I was fairly well known because I was more of an administrative, managerial type guy in the business, and I had a great sound system that I purchased from San Antonio Sound, and it was the front of house system. It was a Macaulay system, and it was a front of house that was used for La Semana Alegre, which was a big rock concert that they had in the 90s in San Antonio. So I bought that front of house system along with a big mixing board and a bunch of other stuff. And anyway, so I would run sound occasionally too, and that was one of the many things I got into in the music business. But anyway, I was kind of just a half-ass musician. But, I could read music, which was unusual for a drummer anyway, because I played band in high school, and, I studied music theory, and, I had to sight read and this kind of thing. So music did serve me. Anyway, so when I decided to put music together, I looked at some of the, and listened to, but I mean, I looked at some of the licensed music out there that I could have bought and put on the front and back into my shows, and I thought, well, it's okay, but I'd like to have something that's a little more original, and actually totally original, because I took a chance that on any of this music that's publicly licensed that you can buy a license for and use it widely, I take the chance that somebody else is going to use the same music, and a lot of the equipment that I purchase, and anyone who does a podcast purchases, you'll find that music that they'll have music built into it, and it's uncanny that a lot of times these podcast host will use that music, and so you'll hear a lot of repetition on that. So I decided that I'd use my handy dandy iPad, which, by the way, I bought that and bought a keyboard for it so I could write when I was on the road or on an airplane or something like that. And anyway, I ended up with a laptop. I'm more of a PC guy. I think Apple does a good job on stuff, and I just love that iPad. But anyway, the Garage Band app on this thing is really incredible, and so I put together quite a few songs that I'm not gonna say I'm proud of them, but I think they work. And that one right there, that da 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 da, and I put that one together, and it's probably got 30 different parts to it. And anyway, so I mixed it down because I was a sound man, so I was able to mix some stuff and separate left and right. If you ever listen to it in headphones, you'll hear the separation, and it's kind of cool. But anyway, that's the reason it's a little bit longer, because I conceived the song, and I arranged it and played it and recorded it. And by the way, all the drums on it, there aren't drum samples on there. I did all the drums by hand on that iPad, and it's funny tapping on an iPad and beat and trying to do a tom run or trying to get the cymbal to sound right, and I could never get the drums to sound how I like them. And I used to have this saying, and I apologize, I'm really, really going off topic here, but I used to have a saying that in the 20 years that I played drums professionally, I spent about, I would say, 3 years really getting to the point that I could play, and the next 17 learning to tune the instrument. And that's a bit of a stretch, but whenever I do listen to drums, I'll just really be complimentary if there's some great tuning going on. My drums, they were just beyond compare. I spent way more money on drums than I should have, but I really, like anything I do, I try to do the best that I can. And I wasn't that great a drummer, so I thought, well, I need to buy my game. And so I did. Ended up buying about $10,000 worth of drums, just the part that's red. And then I picked out my cymbals in Nashville, and I went in a trailer. I said, well, these sound great and everything else. And I picked those. And double braced hardware and flight cases. My cases cost more than most drummers nowadays in just local bands. More drummers spend on their drums. Most drummers. I'm not sure that came out right, but anyway. So I really spend a lot of time, and that comes from having a day job. And if you're a working musician, you're saying, yeah, whatever, Craig, man, just keep bragging, dude, because I was a starving musician for a while, starving artist, and it is no fun. But the gigging was fun. I enjoyed that. I really enjoyed playing with my brothers and sisters occasionally, and it was a lot of fun. But anyway, that's where the bumper music came from. is I created and I recorded it. So if you don't like it, I'm completely to blame. But I'll tell you what, whether you like it or not, the mix is pretty good. I did pretty well on post on it, I think, and that's I'm a way better sound man than I am a recording artist. But yeah, I appreciate that. It was just a good comment. I wanted to mention that. But I wanted to talk to you all today about a book that I'm writing, and it's the third book, and I'm about 3/4 of the way through it, and I apologize. I was supposed to have this thing finished up by now, but it looks like it's not going to be completed until the end of March, and it's approaching the end of February right now, so I'm close. And it's the third installment of the Carson Brand series, and it's an action thriller. It's kind of a spy novel. If you haven't read my books, I of course encourage you to do that. That's always good. The first in the series of the Carson Brand series is Stolen Valor, and that's new. And it's not a military theme book. It's not that. When you read it, you'll go, oh, so that's why I called it that. But that book is available at stolenvalornovel.com for free. If you want to check that out, just stolenvalornovel.com. Click on it. No strings attached. You don't have to buy anything. You will become part of my readers group, but if you don't like that, get the book and feel free to get off it. But I don't spam anybody on my readers group. It's a place where I give stuff away. I give books away. I keep you up to date if I'm going to make an appearance. Pardon me. And COVID kind of slowed that down, but it looks like that Barnes & Noble's going to have me out a couple times, and I think I'm going to be doing a few speaking engagements, so I'll make sure that that's, on that site so you can see it. And it's also, my website is craigrainey.com if you want to find out some information about me. And then, of course, I've got a blog site, which I encourage you to visit. And a lot of these podcasts, I've got a piece of software that turns audio into literature, if you want to call it that, although what I say is not literature. But that blog site is craigrainey.info, and it's Craig's magazine. It's Craig Rainey magazine. And anyway, it's got quite a few articles on there. It gives you some insight on the business. I try to give some advice to up-and-coming writers, and give those of you who are readers, and I'm a reader, give you a look behind the curtain. Because for me, the writing business has been a journey, and I'm still on that road. And so it's the business part of it is probably the most daunting part. Writing is too. Just coming. I don't ever have writer's block. That's never a problem for me. I have something that's more advanced than that. It's called plot block, and sometimes I'll paint myself in a corner and I'll try to get out of it, and I still follow. I follow a format, and I do some outlining, but not a lot. I do format my book, what direction I want to go, and I think there's a format to any book that people are going to read, and it's kind of like, I don't know if y'all have ever heard of the term the immortal mythos, and what that is that's the hero's journey. Any great hero story where the hero is launched on this journey, and they go through everything from Homer's Iliad to the Odyssey, Lord of the Rings, same thing. You have the reluctant hero that's drawn into these extraordinary circumstances, and they refuse the call, and then they take the call anyway. It's there's a formula for any story that comes out, whether it's a movie, screenplay. I've studied screenplays, and I've written a couple, one of which I actually won a few awards on, and it's pretty good. But there's a process that I go through, and the writing is fun. But like I said, sometimes I come against a wall, and it's plot block. I never have writer's block. I can write. And my grandfather used to tell me when I was coming up, I talk so much, always talking. And that's why I have 3 different podcasts, and I can do them all the time. But he said one time, Craig, you don't need anybody to listen to you, do you? You just talk. You should have your own radio show. Well, I don't know if I have the voice for that, but I do have the gab for that. And my granddad, that was probably one of the nicer things he said when he was commenting on my personality or commenting on who I was. But I learned a bunch from that man, and I was thankful to have that education. But I remember him saying that. So, I don't think that writer's block is, in fact, I know writer's block is not among my problems, but plot block. And plot block can be tough. Now, in my books, I'm really particularly proud of the dialogue. And because I think my characters, the character development in some of the past episodes we've had, we talked about developing characters and making them interesting and this kind of thing. But let's talk about Reasonable Sin, which is the third book that's coming out. And like I said, I'm going to say I'm nearly finished with it because I'm 75% written. And usually my post writing, where I polish it up and send it out, it doesn't take me that long because I've already got the cover, I've already got the blurbs, I've got the taglines on it, ISBNs, everything's covered. All I have to do is just finish the prose, edit it, polish it up a little bit, send it out, and it's ready to go. But and by the way, if you are in my readers group, you'll know before anybody else, and you will get a great deal to get that book. And of course I give a few away too. But I plan to launch it at a Barnes and Noble event, and I'll give you more information as I know that. But anyway, in this book, Carson Brand, he started off in Stolen Valor as just an everyman, and he went through some extraordinary things. And he had a buddy of his, and they went to Mexico. His friend was murdered, and then his girlfriend was murdered, and then they came for him. And as it says in the tagline, and that proved not so easy. So in the second book, it continues with Carson Brand, and he is no longer an everyman. He's getting quite the education on how rough the world can be, and luckily he's innately a tough guy anyway. And so he's got an extraordinary amount of luck that that gets him through some of his tight fixes he gets into. But he's got an innate toughness, and he gets hooked up with the Fed, and they put it, they enroll him in some training courses, and because they want him to work as a contractor for him, and that comes out in the book. And then in the third book, and by the way, there's always a cliffhanger at the end of every book. At the end of Stolen Valor, something happens to one of the characters, and everybody goes, "Well, what happened to this character?" And in Dark Motive, which is the second book, it answers that question. And then in, of course, the third book, it goes into a new storyline, but at the same time, there's still some carryover that goes on there. And but what I wanted to talk about on this is how Brand is arcing, and by arcing, I'm talking about it's a literary term, and it's used in movies anywhere about the fact that when your character begins. As a writer, when your character, any character in any story, begins the journey, which is the movie, the screenplay, the book, the story, they start in a certain place. And I'll take Stolen Valor, for instance, the first book. Carson Brand was just a regular guy, owned a little construction company, and which seems kind of boring at this point. But he's kind of a quirky guy, and his friend Bert actually kind of steals the show at the beginning. Very philanderous guy, and just got just a gigantic personality. And he's not the strong silent type, but he's close. And he loves his best friend Bert, but he's pretty critical of him, and he spends a lot of time commenting on his ways. And because Bert is a philanderous guy, and he's kind of a ladies' man, he's an easy target. And and a lot of my characters, I take some of the personality traits from people I know. Some of them I use my own, although I don't think that just me as a person, I don't believe I would be that interesting as a character. And again, I've said this before, but I remind any of you that say, well, I've had some fabulous, really interesting experiences in my life, and I think my life would make a great book. You always have to be careful with that, because the experiences aren't all that the reader is buying in this. The reader's also buying the character. And I know this. I've had some great experiences in my life, and some stuff, and I've met people, and and I've seen a little celebrity, and some people go, "Oh, wow, I want to know about it." But it's life stories tend to be a little bit linear, and the problem with the real people behind it is only in rare occasions are they truly interesting to read. And there's just too much humanity to it. And we want to see a certain amount of superhero-ness in our main characters. But at the same time, we want to see some flaws, but we want to see the flaws that, we want to see flaws that aren't so realistic. I mean, you don't want to know that, your main character spends a lot of time surfing porn or something like that. A good flaw would be that in the case of Carson Brand, he's got a beautiful girlfriend, and he suspects she's cheating on him. And, so that's his problem. He's a little insecure. He's got a temper. He doesn't have a very favorable outlook on his life or on people in general, but he doesn't tolerate a lot of guff, and so he's a little intolerant and a little insecure. But these things are overcome by the fact that he's just a ready-made, built-in hero. It's in his DNA. He's a guy that he loves women, not like his buddy Bert does. He loves women because they're so different than he is, and he can't really figure them out. But he knows that just how elusive they are to him and how he doesn't understand it. I'm talking about, it's not that they aren't drawn to him. They're very attracted to him. He's not a beautiful guy or anything else, but they're attracted to him because he's got that thing, that thing. But just the way they think and how they reason and, how women think is very elusive to him, but very seductive. He's fascinated by women. And so he feels very protective of women and the weak and this kind of thing. And it's just something that it's gotten him in a lot of trouble in his life. And in fact, a lot of the people that know him as somebody that will go on a crusade to help somebody in need, and it to a fault, even to his own peril. So anyway, when he starts off that way, it's, that's kind of part of who he is. And so if, and going back to this thing, if you feel like, well, I'm a really fascinating character, you're going to have to make some stuff up about yourself. I know I do it. If I were to use myself as a main character, I'd have to polish Craig Rainey up a little bit. That's the reason that as an actor, I portray other people, and when I write, I don't write autobiography. I write about other people, and there's certain things in the book, in all these books, that are experiences of mine, particularly in the first one. Some of the fights that Brand is in, they're almost word for word, blow for blow, what I've been through. And it's not that I was ever really a tough guy, I don't think, because I don't consider myself that. I just, I had a buddy of mine that was, he worked with the federal government. He was a federal marshal. And he worked with SWAT. He helped train the Austin SWAT during this time. This is some time ago. I'm older. But anyway, one of the things he shared with me is he said, in law enforcement, we train for one type of person. Now, there are two types, and he's talking about just particularly in this context. When somebody is confronted, violently or otherwise, there are two types. One person is the fight person. That person will turn around and they will fight, and they will attack. And the other one, which makes up about 90% of us, are the flight people. They'll turn and run. And he says, all law enforcement trains for the 10%. And I found through misadventure that I'm a fight person. I found out that I was part of the 10%, and it wasn't because I go out and look for trouble. That's not the criteria. That's not how that's based. What that has to do with is an explosion goes off. Do you run from it or do you run towards it? Typically law enforcement, firefighters, this kind of thing. Those at the World Trade Center, they ran to the danger. Well, those are fight people, not flight people. First responders most often are fight people, not flight people. And, those who are very, very caring, you'll find that. Audie Murphy, who was a famous actor, in the 40s and 50s, well, he was a Congressional Medal of Honor winner in World War II, and then he went into the film business, and I believe one of his first movies was about himself, and but just I guess this guy's maybe 5'5", 5'6", and 120 pounds, soaking wet. But when he was under pressure, he ran towards trouble, not away. So I mean, it's not these big burly guys or these Amazon women that are going to run to the fight. A lot of times, it's the most unlikely person that's going to do that. But anyway, so my character Carson Brand, he's definitely a fight person. He's not scared of a whole lot. In fact, at one point in one of these books, they asked him, he goes, "Well, how do you go with, how do you conquer your fear?" And he doesn't say anything because he doesn't want to admit it. But he's afraid. He gets afraid, just like he's like the rest of us. But it's how you process that, and you process it productively or counterproductively, and that's what he goes. But so when I'm talking about arcing a character, Carson Brand started off as just a regular guy. Had this little construction company, had some guys he worked with, had his buddy. They went into Mexico, and by the way, when they went into Mexico, they went to Arturo's bar, and that's actually a bar over in Piedras Negras. I've been there, and there's a bartender, big old, tall, 6'5" bartender named Arturo there, and I don't know if he's still there because it's been several years ago. The bar, Rod Dogs, which is a place that Carson Brand hangs out, that's a real bar. It's still there. And the bartender, Karen, I got her permission on this, and she's a character, and it's true. She was the bartender there. She's now working elsewhere, but she's real. That character is based on her. And I kind of did it because she was my first fan when I was in the film business, and she really supported me, and it was tough, and I wanted to give her the nod, so I went ahead and I dedicated one of these characters to her, and she appreciates it. She's on my Facebook page holding two of the books that she's in, and it's really special that Karen allows me to reference her. It makes me feel closer to her because she, like Carson Brand is with the Karen in that book. They're good friends, long-term friends. Well, so are Karen and I, the real Karen. And but anyway, as the third book develops, and we're talking about arcing a character, and I keep talking about not really getting there. Your character has to grow. That character has to move through life. And the reason that a character has to arc is because, like any of us, that character is impacted by his or her experiences and his or her hardships and the fears and the good times and everything else, so that person will change. And you'll find that if a character is well developed, they'll start off, in the case of Carson Brand, just a regular guy, and all of a sudden he's cast into this situation where his friend is killed, and he has to react to this. And as he reacts to it, he finds that a lot of the stuff that he's only read in the newspaper and seen on the internet and everything else, it's real, and he's in the middle of it, and he's seen the victims of this stuff, and the cartel, the Mexican cartels play a big role in the first book and part of the second book, and I did a lot of research on that, and so anyway, as a character, he's impacted by that, and there's a lot of violence that comes his way, as these action thrillers tend to be, and by the time we get to the third book, he's starting to be bothered by this. There's he has committed a lot of acts that that most of us wouldn't consider doing, and he was just put in a situation where it's kill or be killed, and he killed. And there were times when he wanted to help somebody, and he had to get some information out of somebody, and he did it. And anyway, so in the third book. And one thing about arcing a character is when you're taking them on their journey, is if you're writing a series like I'm doing, and I don't know if there are going to be 10 books, 5 books, 100 books in a series. I don't know, but you got to be careful that you don't have too much arc on this character. You don't want him to go from the first book to the third book, and in the first book he's a Virgo, and the last book he's a Sagittarius. You don't want to make some major changes in him. When he's caring and he's religious, and the next one he's hateful and anti-religious. You need to keep certain things that are close to him, principles and personality traits. You need to make sure that those things are consistent, but make sure you season it with those experiences. And like I said, if you're writing just a single novel with characters in it, like Massacre at Agua Caliente, which was my first book, it was a Western. My main character had to arc, and he had to arc quickly and get to a certain point, and I had 400 pages to get him from point A to point B, and it was important that I did that because as readers we're living our lives, and we expect certain things from our from our heroes and from our characters and our villains, and you want to make sure that they do that. I remember talking about villains. I was in a movie called Portrait in Sepia Tone, and I was second in the credits. I played the main character, who was a female. I played her husband. He was a turn of the century doctor, and just kind of a bad dude. He's just, you want to talk about misogynist and this kind of thing. Women's places in the kitchen, and at that time suffrage was being bandied about for women. There were suffragettes, and it was brought up, and he of course was against women having the right to vote. But the director, the auteur who wrote this, she said that it was based on a real character, and he was a real butthole. And I said, okay. So when we were doing the character analysis and doing the table read and really going through it, I told her, I said, well, this guy is Snidely Whiplash. He is a really, really unlikable character. Nobody's going to believe it. You got to give him something that the audience can relate with, because if your villains are so villainous that there's no good to them, that there's nobody's going to understand their motivation. Your best villains are the ones that your audience goes, well, I hate him, but I guess I can understand why he would be the way he is. I guess I understand why, what led him to the dark side, so to speak. And, just looking at, take a look at, take a look at the Star Wars, epics. It's, what made Darth Vader who he was. And he started off as, and once we saw the other episodes, he started off as just a regular guy, a loving guy, had a girlfriend, was in love with her and everything else. And just, things made him that way. So he was a villain, but a sympathetic character. And so I really, really try to make sure that I focus on that. And so as my characters arc, and all of them do, even my under 5 characters, the ones that are just background, I try to put a little bit of pizzazz in them so that they're interesting too. And I want my readers to develop a relationship with every character in the book. Now, I'm not talking about I'm not going to do all this backstory and the guy at the bank that gives Carson Brand some cash. We don't need to do background. Well, he came from a broken home, and he and his wife are not really getting along right now, and the child's not making good grades. And I'm not going to go into all that, but at the same time, you're going to want to have some interaction there and some something that's believable human interaction. So we do that. But in the third book, and I've already spent some time talking about everything but this. I'm facing a little bit of plot block, and what it is this: my main character, our hero, Carson Brand, has he's pretty much put himself in a situation where I'm not sure he's going to be able to get himself out of it, and I'm not looking for advice in this. I'm going to work it out. I'm just going to let you know how I work and how my brain operates, or sometimes it doesn't, but. So how I deal with that? I mentioned I don't have writer's block. I have plot block, and I have that right now. And what I've done is I've developed the story. I've got all the characters are at play now, and we know which way we're going. We know who the bad guy is. We know who, if there is one, who the damsel in distress is. We've established a journey for Brand. He is there's no way he can get out of it. He has to take this road. And so anyway, that's where we are. And when I talk about plot block, I know where we're going. I have this story documented out. I know how it ends already. I know that. And I know why it ends. And I already have, because all my books, I like to have a little bit of a cliffhanger, and I like to have a twist at the end where you go, so that's it. And I've got all that worked out. But I have found that with writing, for me, that if it doesn't drive the plot, whether it's description or dialogue, I don't write it. I don't keep it in there. And I've earlier when I was writing, I've deleted 20 pages because it didn't serve the plot. And so I rented a few things here. I had to rearrange the book a little bit to make it better. By the way, I've done that in all the books. I've had to rearrange chapters so they worked out a little bit better. But anyway, sorry, I'm trying to make this episode have a point, and I would say this. I hope it's satisfactory enough that I'm sharing this as a working author, a published author, and I'm sharing my thoughts with you and my quandaries with you, and my dear readers and listeners. I really, really, I love those who love my books and who read them. But just a little behind Carson, a little bit of background behind Carson Brand is that I've got to be true to his character. I've got to be true to what I know about him that never appears on the page. I've got to be true to what does appear on the page, and I've got to be true to how he's going to react based on where he is right now. And Reasonable Sin's a little darker book because, as I mentioned earlier, he is starting to come to grips with the things that he has done in the past 2 books, and he did at the time. In fact, at one point, he was very surprised that he was just a regular guy, and what he was seeing and what he was doing, he was surprised that it wasn't bugging him. And by the way, I apologize for my scratchy throat. It's change of the season, and I don't really get allergies or hay fever or anything, but what it does, it tends to congest me a little bit. But anyway, going back, I want to make sure that I'm true to those things, and that I pay homage to what my readers want done. I'm a Jack Reacher fan. By the way, I just watched the series that came out on was it Netflix or was it Amazon? I think it might have been Amazon. Loved it. It was true to the character. If you haven't read Lee Child's Jack Reacher, you should. It's well written. I think that Lee Child did a good job conceiving this guy. There's some things that he does with his characters that I would never do with Carson Brand. I think this guy walks on water and he's bulletproof, and Carson Brand definitely is not that. I kind of took a cue from James Bond. I think that the James Bond played by what's his name, Craig. He's I think he's really Daniel Craig. Sorry, I think that he's really accurate to where the writer wanted him to go. Ian Fleming said Ian Fleming, first off, he had a spy background, but so he knew a lot of these things, but he didn't dwell too much on it. It was enough that you could see it was genuine, and we all just love that, how the operation works and how administratively and so forth. But what we do know is that James Bond is kind of a brigand, and he's he is not your typical agent, and in almost every book in Ian Fleming's series, he becomes grievously injured to the point that he almost dies, and and I think with Daniel Craig's character they did that, and I really like that. But with Carson Brand, I also did that because I think that, and I hope it doesn't appear to be a ripoff because I don't think it does, but I think that if our heroes get through these situations, these tight spots, too easily or unfazed, I think that it dilutes the character. I think it really takes a lot of the texture from what you're trying to do as a writer, and that's probably my one beef that I have with Lee Child's Jack Reacher, which I just love. I love the character. I think the actor just really does a great job because Jack Reacher in the book is 6'5", 250, 260 pounds, and just he's just carved from wood. This guy, and so the guy that plays him, perfect. Really good casting on that. But so with Carson Brand, like I said, this is a darker book, and not to the point that it's morose. It's not that. It's a darker book in that he is figuring out that the people that he thought that he was allied with are really not on his side at all. He is just convenient. He's also realizing that, and one of the things he talks about in Dark Motive is he's really surprised that all the things he's done, he's not in prison right now. And there's a reason he's not. And in Reasonable Sin, I get into that, and I open the door to that to explain why he is at large and what larger forces are have been supporting him but are also arrayed against him at the same time. So it's interesting talking to you about this. It's kind of giving me some answers that I needed anyway, and as my granddad said, I don't need anybody to talk back to me. I'll just talk to myself and work it out. But I really encourage you to read the books. I I think that there's going to come a time where these books are widely read, and I think it's going to come soon. And I believe that the people that read it are going to go, this is a pretty good book. And I say this with all humility, because there's a difference between writing and your ego saying, oh, look, I'm a writer, look at this. And there's a difference between that and writing and going, this can compete with the big boys. And then when you sell about 10,000 of them, you go, okay, it took some time, but here we go. If I can just get the word out there and people see it, well, shoot, people might actually enjoy it. And I really believe Reasonable Sin, the third book, this one is the crown of glory so far, and I'm hoping that they get better every time, and I think they have. The fourth book, I've already got the title, and I've already got most of the plot put together on it, but Reasonable Sin's pretty good. I'm liking what it's doing, and like I said, probably, and I'm gonna commit to you here on this podcast that by the end of March, this thing will be on shelves. It'll be ready to go, and I'll keep you motivated, Listen to me. I'll keep myself motivated. I'll keep you updated on what happens, but I really appreciate it, and please hit the like button, would you? I would sure love to know that y'all are out there and you're enjoying it. Leave a comment. Let me know if there's something else you want to know. I'm not going to sit here and read the book to you, but as we get a little further along, I'll tell you a little bit about it. But pick up that free copy of Stolen Valor, stolenvalornovel.com. All you do is click on it. You got the book. You're reading it tonight. Appreciate you. And by the way, here's some more of my music.